You've entered Interstellar Chronicles. Close your eyes and drift into another world, a place where stars whisper forgotten names, where time folds and destinies collide across galaxies. Your journey begins now. He was just a star-scrap scavenger. Then he stole the heart of a galactic seer, HFY Sci-Fi. Beneath the aurora-streaked skies of Arinder, where twin suns bled gold and crimson into a horizon of rust-red deserts, the planet pulsed with a raw, untamed energy. Crystal spires, forged in the crucible of the planet's molten core over eons, jutted from the sands like the bones of a forgotten god, their facets catching the light in prismatic arcs that shimmered like liquid fire. The air was thick with the metallic tang of ionized dust, the low hum of magnetic storms churning beneath the crust, and the faint, eerie resonance of ancient technologies buried in the dunes, relics of a civilization lost to time. Arinder was a world of beauty and treachery, its deserts hiding ruins that whispered of lost empires, its skies a battleground for the ambitions of a galaxy fractured by power and pride. The Elthar Dominion, their bioluminescent skin glowing like molten starlight, had claimed this planet as neutral ground for the concordance of spheres, a brittle alliance of species held together by necessity, ambition, and a web of mistrust as delicate as the crystal spires themselves. Their citadel, grown from living crystal that sang with a mournful, harmonic resonance, stood as a monument to their supremacy, its spires bending light into halos that seemed to defy the stars. To the Elthar humans, those frail, fleeting creatures from a scarred backwater world, were little more than cosmic scavengers, tolerated only for their uncanny knack for surviving in the galaxy's margins, picking through the wreckage of wars, empires, and stars gone cold. This is the story of Elias Voss, a human starscrap scavenger with nothing but a battered skiff, a crooked grin, and a heart that refused to break, and Silvara Kren, an Elthar seer whose visions wove the fates of empires across the quantum threads of reality. It begins with a clash, a spark of defiance that could have burned them both to ash, and ends with a love that reshaped the stars, a bond that defied the galaxy's laws and rewrote its future. The Arinder Trade Bazaar sprawled across a vast canyon, its stalls carved into the crystal cliffs, a chaotic symphony of commerce, intrigue, and barely contained tension. Hover drones buzzed like insects, their anti-grav engines whining as they ferried crates of luminescent algae that glowed like trapped stars, void-forged blades that hummed with latent energy, and neural implants that promised to rewrite minds or shatter them entirely. The air was heavy with the metallic tang of ionized sand, the cloying sweetness of Elthar pheromones, and the acrid smoke of makeshift forges where traders bartered secrets as often as goods, data slates with encrypted star charts, fragments of lost tech, whispers of rebellion against the Concordance's iron grip. The bazaar was a melting pot of species. The insectoid Zycra with their clicking mandibles and faceted eyes, the gelatinous Vorlith pulsing in their containment suits like living nebulae, the Elthar gliding through the crowd like living lanterns, their glows shifting from silver to gold with their moods. Elias Voss leaned against his salvage skiff, a patchwork of scavenged hull plates held together by clever welds, duct tape, and sheer will, its hull scarred from asteroid impacts, pirate skirmishes, and the occasional crash landing. His wiry frame was clad in a worn leather jacket, its sleeves patched from years of crawling through derelict wrecks, its pockets stuffed with tools, screwdrivers, sonic probes, a coil of nanofiber wire, a cracked multi-tool he'd had since he was a kid. His hands, stained with grease and calloused from a life of prying open the galaxy's refuse, fidgeted with a broken circuit board, his fingers tracing its cracked pathways with an almost tender precision, as if coaxing life from the dead. At 34, Elias was no diplomat, no warrior, just a man who'd outwitted pirates, navigated asteroid storms, and turned junk into survival, his instincts honed by a childhood in Earth's slums, where you learn to fight for every scrap, and a decade scavenging the void, where the only law was staying alive. His hazel eyes, sharp and restless, scanned the crowd, catching the flicker of a cloaked figure slipping between stalls, the subtle shift of an Elthar merchant's glow as a deal soured, the nervous twitch of a trader palming a hidden blade beneath his cloak, the faint hum of a drone malfunctioning in the heat. Across the bazaar, Silvara Kren, the Oracle of the Void, moved like a vision made flesh, her presence parting the crowd like a blade through silk, her glow casting faint halos across the sand that rippled with her thoughts. Her willowy frame shimmered with silver and indigo light, her bioluminescence pulsing in time with her breath, a living constellation bound in flesh. Her robes, woven from star silk that flowed like liquid moonlight, caught the aurora's glow, making her seem less a person and more a fragment of the cosmos itself. A star that had wandered too close to the world. Her seven-fingered hands traced patterns in the air, as if plucking threads from the quantum weave of reality, each gesture precise, deliberate, sacred. Her movements a dance that spoke of centuries spent seeing what others could not. Her eyes, opalescent and blind to the physical world, saw futures, fractured, fleeting glimpses of what could be, paths branching into infinity, each choice a ripple that could reshape empires, topple stars, or snuff out worlds. To her, humans were a discordant hum, their chaotic lives a blur against the clarity of her visions, their short spans a flicker against the Elthar's centuries, their emotions a storm she could neither predict nor control, a chaos that grated against her ordered sight. The Concordants had gathered to address a crisis. The Krothak swarm, insectoid raiders with carapaces like blackened steel and minds linked in a relentless hive, had overrun a vital mining outpost in Arinder's outer wastes, choking the galaxy's supply of quantum isotopes critical for Elthar technology. Power cells for their starships, shield matrices for their citadels, neural cores for their psychic drones that guarded their skies. Humans were expected to clear the debris, to toil in the shadows of their betters, their role as menial as the dust beneath their feet, their lives expendable in the grand calculus of the Concordance, their names forgotten before the ink dried on the orders. Silvara's voice, soft but edged with an authority that silenced the crowd, rose from a crystal dais at the bazaar's heart, her words carrying the weight of prophecy, her glow steady as she addressed the gathered envoys. Zychra warlords, Vorlith emissaries, Elthar nobles, and a handful of human delegates who stood at the edges, their presence barely acknowledged. Scavenger Voss, she said, her tone laced with disdain as she turned her sightless gaze toward him, her glow flickering with a hint of amusement, a ripple of silver and indigo that danced across her skin like a playful star. Your kind's talent for sifting through refuse is noted. Your people may clear the wreckage when we are done. Your hands are suited to such tasks, your minds to little else. But strategy, foresight, the weaving of fates, these are for those who see beyond the dust of this world, who hold the stars in their sight. The crowd tittered, Elthar merchants smirking behind their glowing hands, their bioluminescence pulsing in amusement, a ripple of light spreading through the bazaar like laughter. The Zychra clicking their mandibles in agreement, the Vorlith pulsing faintly in their suits, their forms rippling with shared contempt. Elias's grin didn't falter, though his eyes glinted with a spark of defiance, sharp as a blade, his fingers tightening briefly on the circuit board before he set it down on the skiff's hull with a soft clink. He pushed off the skiff, dusting off his hands, his voice carrying a casual confidence that belied his ragged appearance, a drawl that cut through the murmurs like a well-aimed shot, laced with a humor that made a few traitors pause, their eyes flicking to him with curiosity. Oracle Kren, no disrespect, but humans don't just pick up scraps, he said, his tone light but unyielding, his hands resting on his hips, his jacket creaking faintly as he shifted his weight. We've broken worse than the Krothaks, pirates, storms, even our own mistakes, and we've got the scars to prove it. We've got a saying back home. If it's broke, fix it. If it ain't, break it and make something better. Give us a shot and we'll do more than sweep your floors. Bet we could surprise even a seer like you. Make you see something new in that fancy weave of yours. The bazaar fell silent, the air thick with tension, the hum of drones faltering as if the world held its breath, the auroras above seeming to pause in their dance, their light dimming as if to listen. Silvara's glow flickered, a ripple of indigo and silver, her blind eyes seeming to pierce him, as if searching for the source of his audacity, her hands stilling mid-gesture, her robes rippling faintly as if stirred by her agitation. A human challenging the oracle of the void? It was unthinkable, like a spark daring to outshine a supernova, a grain of sand defying a storm, a flicker of life challenging the eternal. She glided closer, her presence towering despite her delicate frame, her voice a low, dangerous hum that seemed to vibrate in the bones of those nearby, resonating with the crystal cliffs around them, a sound that felt like fate itself. "You believe your kind can match an Elthar Seer?" she said, her words sharp enough to cut, each syllable a challenge, her glow pulsing with a controlled intensity that made the air feel heavy. "Prove it, Scavenger, or crawl back to your wreckage and leave the fates to those who see them. Your kind are but a flicker in the weave. Do not presume to unravel it, lest you burn in its threads." Fate, or perhaps sheer human audacity, handed Elias his chance. The Concordance formed a task force to retake the outpost, staging from a forward camp in Arinder's crimson wastes, where the sand glowed faintly under the auroras, casting eerie shadows across the dunes. The air heavy with the scent of ozone, crystal dust, and the faint, acrid tang of burning circuitry. Elias, with nothing but his skiff, a handful of scavenged gear, and a stubborn streak wider than a neutron star, signed on as a scout, his name barely a footnote in the mission logs, his presence tolerated only because the Elthar lacked bodies to throw at the swarm's relentless claws. Silvara, guided by a cryptic vision of a shadowed spark tied to victory, a flicker in the quantum weave she couldn't fully parse, a shadow that danced at the edge of her sight, elusive and defiant, led the operation, though she scoffed at Elias's inclusion, her glow flaring with irritation as she reviewed the roster. "A scavenger among my warriors?" she murmured to her aide. A live Elthar named Valthar, whose emerald skin pulsed with quiet skepticism, his lance resting lightly in his hand, its tip glowing with a faint, psychic hum. "He'll run at the first screech of the swarm or die screaming, and we'll be left to clean up his mess, dragging his broken toys behind us." The Elthar camp was a marvel, a lattice of crystal and energy that seemed to breathe, its perimeter guarded by psychic drones that hummed with an eerie, harmonic song, their forms shimmering like liquid glass, their movements guided by the neural cores that pulsed at the camp's heart, a network of living tech that felt like an extension of the Elthar themselves. The air vibrated with the low thrum of shield generators, the faint crackle of Elthar communicators weaving a melodic cascade of thought and sound, and the occasional rumble of Arinder's restless crust, a reminder of the planet's volatility, its magnetic storms a constant threat to their tech. Elias, armed with a cobbled-together plasma cutter, a scavenged shield pack that flickered unreliably under the strain of Arinder storms, and a battered utility belt stuffed with improvised tools, screwdrivers, sonic probes, a coil of nanofiber wire, a cracked multi-tool, even a jury-rigged EMP grenade, felt like a rat in a cathedral, his boots leaving faint prints in the glowing sand, his shadow stark against the crystal lattice. The Elthar warriors, their lances glowing with psychic energy that pulsed in time with their thoughts, ignored him, their thoughts hidden behind luminous faces, their movements graceful and precise, their glows shifting from silver to gold as they prepared for battle, their armor humming faintly with embedded tech. But Elias saw what they missed. A glitch in the camp's sensor array, its readings stuttering under Arinder's magnetic storms, throwing off their scans by 3 cycles. A subtle but deadly flaw. A faint tremor in the sand. A telltale sign of Krothack's burrowers tunneling beneath, their claws scraping against the crystal bedrock. A sound too low for Elthar ears but not for a scavenger's instincts. He'd spent years dodging tracks in derelict starships, his senses honed by close calls and hard-won survival, his hands trained to find the flaws in machines others overlooked, his eyes sharp for the signs of danger others dismissed. He found Silvara in her command pavilion, a translucent dome where holographic maps floated like ghosts, their light casting her glow in stark relief against the crystal walls, her robes pooling around her like starlight on water, her presence a quiet contrast to the chaos of the camp. She stood at the center, her 7-fingered hands weaving patterns as she sifted through visions, her face serene yet taut with the weight of futures only she could see, her glow pulsing in time with the map's flickering data, her opalescent eyes distant but sharp. "Oracle," Elias said, his voice steady but respectful, stepping into the pavilion's cool light, his boots leaving faint trails of red sand, his jacket creaking faintly as he adjusted his utility belt. "Your sensors are off by 3 cycles, magnetic interference from the storms, same as I've seen on jumped ships in the void. It's throwing your scans, leaving us blind to anything tunneling under us." Crothax burrowers could be right below, and your shields won't hold if they hit with an EMP. I can recalibrate the array, tighten the cycles, maybe rig a backup with some scrap from my skiff, but we need to move fast. Silvara's glow pulsed with irritation, her hands stilling mid-gesture, her robes rippling as if stirred by an unseen wind, her blind eyes narrowing as if she could see the audacity in his voice, her glow shifting from silver to a sharp indigo. "You dare question my vision with your crude machines?" she said, her voice a low, dangerous hum that seemed to resonate in the crystal around them, vibrating in the air like a plucked string, a sound that felt like fate itself. "I see the threads of fate, Scavenger, the weave of what will be, paths you cannot comprehend. You see only dirt and broken things, the refuse of a galaxy that has moved beyond your kind." "I'm not questioning," Elias replied, meeting her unseeing gaze, his tone calm but unyielding, his hands still as he stood his ground, his eyes steady despite the weight of her presence. "I'm saying I've seen tech fail, and I've seen what happens when you ignore the signs. People die, ships crash, whole crews gone because someone didn't check the wiring, didn't listen to the hum. I've lost people to mistakes like that. My sister, Lila, my crew, folks I swore I'd keep safe, gone because I wasn't fast enough, smart enough. I'd rather not add us to the list, Oracle or not, visions or no visions." Her aide, Valther, bristled, his emerald glow flaring as he stepped forward, his lance humming faintly, its tip glowing with a psychic pulse, his voice sharp with disbelief. "You would lecture the Oracle, human? Your tools are toys, your life a flicker. Hold your tongue." But Silvara raised a hand, silencing him, her glow softening slightly, a flicker of silver giving way to gold, her opalescent eyes narrowing as if searching for something in the weave. She tilted her head, as if sensing a ripple in her visions. A shadow she couldn't place, a spark that defied her understanding, a thread that burned brighter than the rest. "You speak of loss," she said, her voice softer, probing, her fingers twitching as if to trace the shape of his words in the air. "Yet you stand here, risking more, for strangers who scorn you, for a cause you cannot see. Why?" Elias's grin faded, his eyes darkening with a weight that belied his casual tone, his fingers brushing the edge of his jacket where a faded name Lila was stitched into the lining, a reminder of a promise he'd failed to keep. "Because someone's got to fix the mess," he said, his voice low, steady, his eyes meeting hers despite their blindness. "Might as well be me. I'm not here to play hero Oracle, just to do what needs doing, to keep the people around me breathing a little longer. That's enough for me." That moment, unnoticed by either, cracked the foundation of Silvara's certainty, a fissure in the unyielding crystal of her world, a spark that burned brighter than her visions could contain, a thread that wove itself into her fate. The outpost was a labyrinth of collapsed tunnels and Crothax hives, the air thick with sulfur and the acrid stench of ichor, the ground trembling with the swarm's relentless movements, their claws scraping against the crystal bedrock like a chorus of death, a sound that echoed in the bones. Their carapaces glinted like oil slicks under Arinder's auroras, their eyes glowing with a malevolent intelligence, their forms a grotesque fusion of insect and machine, their limbs tipped with claws that could rend steel, their mandibles dripping venom that hissed as it hit the sand. The Elthar fought with surgical grace, their psychic lances carving arcs of light through the enemy, their movements synchronized like a dance rehearsed for centuries, each strike guided by Silvara's visions, their glows pulsing in unison as they cut through the swarm, their armor humming with embedded tech that shielded them from the swarm's psychic pulses. But the Crothax were a tide, their numbers endless, their hive mind adapting with terrifying speed, countering the Elthar's precision with sheer, brutal force, their claws tearing through crystal and steel with mechanical precision, their psychic pulses scrambling sensors and minds alike, sowing chaos in the ranks. Elias moved differently, slipping through shadows, rigging traps from scavenged mines and coolant pipes, his plasma cutter humming as he severed Crothax limbs with scavenged precision, his movements a blend of instinct and desperation, a scavenger's dance honed in the void. He used the terrain, ducking into crevices, luring drones into choke points where his improvised explosives, cobbled from fuel cells, wiring and shards of crystal, tore through their ranks with bursts of shrapnel and fire, the blasts shaking the tunnels until dust rained from the ceilings. He moved like a ghost, his jacket singed, his shield pack flickering, his eyes burning with a quiet, unyielding focus, his breath steady despite the chaos around him, his hands deft as he rewired a trap mid-battle, his multi-tool sparking as he forced a connection. Silvara, sensing the battle through her visions, felt a ripple in the quantum weave, a disturbance she couldn't fully parse, a shadow that danced at the edge of her sight, elusive and defiant. This human didn't fight like a drone. He danced with the chaos, turning it into a weapon, his actions a blur of instinct and ingenuity that defied her predictions, a spark that burned through the weave like a rogue star. She saw him in fleeting glimpses, a shadow darting through smoke, a spark of defiance against the swarm's relentless tide, his cutter flashing as he carved a path through a drone swarm to protect an Elthar warrior, his grin fierce even as blood dripped from a cut above his eye, his voice a low shout as he called for the warrior to fall back. When a Krothak stalker, its mandibles dripping venom, ambushed Valthar, pinning him against a shattered pylon with a claw that could crush crystal, Elias acted without hesitation. He leapt from a collapsed platform, slammed a jury-rigged EMP grenade into the creature's maw, and detonated it, the blast knocking him back into a pile of rubble, his shield pack sparking as it absorbed the shock, his jacket tearing at the seams. He dragged Valthar to safety, his own arm bleeding from a gash, his breath ragged but steady, his eyes never leaving the shadows for the next threat, his multi-tool already in hand as he checked Valthar's wounds. Valthar, his emerald glow dimming in shock, stared at the scruffy human, his composure shattered, his voice a whisper as he clutched his wounded side, his lance lying useless in the dust. "You saved me," he said, his words halting, as if the act defied his understanding. "Why?" Elias shrugged, wincing as he tied a rag around his wound, his grin lopsided but warm, his eyes catching the aurora's glow through a crack in the tunnel. "Couldn't let you hog all the glory," he said, his voice light but steady. "Besides, you owe me a drink now, something better than that algae swill you Elthar call wine." Later, in the flickering light of a makeshift camp under Arinder's auroras, the air cool and heavy with the scent of crystal dust, Silvara found Elias cleaning his cutter, his hands steady despite the cuts crisscrossing his arms, the firelight casting shadows across his weathered face, highlighting the scars that told stories he rarely shared. A burn from a plasma leak, a slash from a pirate's blade, a dent from a falling beam in a collapsing wreck. She stood at the edge of the firelight, her glow softened to a gentle silver, her star-silk robes pooling around her like starlight on water, her presence a quiet contrast to the chaos of the day, her opalescent eyes fixed on him as if seeing him for the first time. "You saved one of mine," she said, her voice probing, almost uncertain. A rare crack in her oracle's poise that revealed the woman beneath, a vulnerability she'd hidden for centuries. "Valthar is my kin, bound by blood and oath, a warrior of centuries, my shield in countless battles. Why risk your life for an Elthar who scorned you, who saw you as less than the dust you walk on?" Elias looked up, his grin lopsided but warm, his eyes catching the aurora's glow like flecks of gold, a spark of humor hiding the weight of his words, his hands pausing on the cutter as he met her gaze. "Figured you'd miss him more than me," he said, his voice light but steady, his fingers brushing the rag tied around his arm. "Besides, I don't like leaving folks in the dirt. Seen too much of that back home. Earth's not exactly a paradise, you know. Slums, raids, people scrabbling for scraps, fighting over the last can of protein paste. You do what you can for the people around you, or what's the point of surviving? You just end up alone with a pile of junk." Her opalescent eyes lingered, searching for something her visions couldn't grasp, her glow shifting to a softer silver, almost hesitant, as if she were stepping into a world she didn't understand. The Elthar valued foresight, logic, the cold clarity of destiny. Their lives measured in centuries, their actions calculated to preserve the weave of fate, their emotions suppressed as distractions from the truth. Yet this human, with his fleeting years and scarred hands, acted on instinct, on something raw and unquantifiable, loyalty, perhaps, or something deeper. something that tugged at the edges of her understanding, like a thread she couldn't quite pull. She stepped closer, her glow pulsing gently, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to break the moment, her robes brushing the sand with a faint rustle. "You are perplexing," she said, almost to herself, her fingers twitching as if to trace the shape of his presence in the weave, her glow softening to a warm gold, a color she hadn't felt in centuries. "Your kind lives so briefly, yet you burn so fiercely, as if each moment is a star you must ignite, a fire you carry against the dark." Elias chuckled, wiping blood from his cheek with the back of his hand, his grin softening the weariness in his eyes, his voice carrying a warmth that seemed to fill the space between them, a spark that warmed the cold night. "Yeah, that's what they tell me," he said, his tone teasing but sincere. "Short life, big noise. Gotta make it count, right? No point hoarding time if you're not gonna use it. Every great love begins with a surrender, not to defeat, but to truth." The mission faltered, the task force battered by the swarm's relentless assaults, their numbers swelling with each passing hour, their hive mind adapting faster than the Elthar could counter, their drones shifting tactics mid-battle, their claws finding weaknesses in the Elthar's shields. The Krothax had a hive core, a psychic node buried deep in a Rinder's crust, its pulses driving the swarm's movements, a throbbing heart of alien will that coordinated their every claw and sting, a beacon that hummed with a malevolent intelligence. Destroying it meant navigating a warren of tunnels rigged with traps, acid pits that could melt crystal, collapsing ceilings that could crush a squad, psychic minds that could shred a mind as easily as a body, their pulses a scream that lingered in the skull. Silvara's visions showed a path, a delicate thread through the chaos, a series of precise strikes to reach the core, guided by her sight and the Elthar's psychic lances. Their movements a dance of light and death. But Elias saw a flaw. The Krothax were adapting, their hive mind countering her predictions with alarming speed, learning from each failed assault, their drones shifting tactics to block her paths, their psychic pulses scrambling her visions until they blurred at the edges. He proposed a scavenger's gambit misdirection, the kind of trick he'd used to outwit pirates in the asteroid belts, to slip past blockades and live another day, a plan born of desperation and cunning. "We hit them loud and messy up top," he said, sketching a map in the sand with a stick, his hand steady despite the blood drying on his knuckles, his eyes bright with a plan that felt like madness, his voice steady as he traced the lines. "Blast every sonic rig we've got. Salvaged comms, old mining drones, anything that makes noise, even the speakers for my skiff. Make it look like a full assault. Tanks, drones, the works, screaming across every frequency, lighting up their sensors like a supernova. While they're distracted, we slip in through a side tunnel, one they've forgotten, one I found in the outpost's old schematics, buried in a data slate I pulled from the wreckage. I've dodged raiders this way for years. Give him a shiny target, and they forget the shadows." Silvara's glow flared with skepticism, her hands clenching, her robes rippling as if stirred by her agitation, her voice sharp as she paced the pavilion, her opalescent eyes narrowing as if she could see the flaws in his plan despite her blindness. "Foolhardy," she said, her words cutting like a lance, her glow pulsing with a sharp indigo that spoke of her frustration. "You'll be torn apart, and my warriors with you, dragged into your reckless chaos, your human madness. My visions show a path, mine, not yours, a path of precision, of order, woven by centuries of sight, not this gamble born of desperation." "Maybe," Elias said, his grin softening, his eyes steady as they met her unseeing gaze, his voice low and earnest, his hands resting on the map, the sand clinging to his fingers. "But I've seen your path, Oracle, and it's a meat grinder. The Krothax are playing you, adapting faster than your visions can keep up, turning your plans against you, blocking your threads. You see the future, right? Look at my plan. Look at it and tell me it ends in ruin. Tell me I'm wrong, and I'll back off, haul my junk and go." Her visions flickered, showing a shadow, his shadow, woven into the outcome, its edges blurred by uncertainty. A chaos she couldn't parse, a spark that burned through the weave like a rogue star, defying her attempts to pin it down. She frowned, her glow dimming, her voice bitter with the weight of doubt. a rare admission for one who saw all. Her hands trembling as they fell to her sides, her robes stilling as if the storm within her had paused. "I cannot see clearly," she said, the words tasting like ash, her opalescent eyes shimmering with a flicker of fear, a crack in her certainty that felt like falling. "Your plan defies my sight, twists the threads I know, unravels what I have woven, burns where it should fade. Then trust me," Elias said, his voice low, earnest, his hand hovering near hers but not touching, as if afraid to break the fragile moment between them. His eyes soft with a sincerity that made her glow flicker. "Not your visions, not the weave, not the stars you see. Me. I've got no fancy powers, no centuries to burn, but I know how to survive, how to turn a bad hand into a winning one, how to make something out of nothing. Let me show you, Silvara. Not the oracle, but you." Her aide, Valther, protested, his emerald glow flaring as he stepped forward, his lance humming faintly, his voice sharp with disbelief, his eyes narrowing as he glared at Elias. "You would stake our lives on this human?" he said, his words dripping with scorn. "He is no seer, no warrior, merely a scavenger of junk, a flicker who dares to speak to the eternal." But Silvara silenced him with a glance, her opalescent eyes narrowing, her glow steadying as she weighed the shadow in her visions, the spark that refused to dim, the human who stood before her with nothing but a grin and a plan that felt like madness. Against her logic, against centuries of Elthar doctrine that prized certainty above all, she agreed, swayed by a vision she couldn't fully grasp. A spark in the dark, a shadow that burned, a human who defied the fates she saw, a thread that wove itself into her heart. The plan worked, but only just. Elias led a decoy team, blasting salvaged sonic rigs, old mining drones, broken comms units, even a jury-rigged speaker from his skiff that blared an old Earth tune he'd found in a wreck, a defiant anthem that echoed through the canyons. To mimic a full-scale assault, the noise shaking the crystal spires until they sang with dissonance, the sand trembling under the onslaught. The swarm surged to meet it, their drones pouring from the tunnels, their claws tearing at the sand, their psychic pulses scrambling sensors as they chased the false fleet, their chittering a scream that drowned out the Aurora's hum. Silvara's unit slipped into the side tunnels, her lance humming as she carved through defenses, her visions guiding her steps to a maze of death, acid pits hissing as they burned through stone, psychic minds pulsing with a scream that tore at her mind, drones lurking in the shadows with claws that gleamed like death. But the Krothaks were cunning. They sensed the deception, their hive mind shifting, their drones doubling back. They collapsed a tunnel, trapping Elias's team in a crumbling chamber filled with chittering drones and snapping claws, the air thick with the stench of ichor and the scream of tearing metal, the walls shaking as the spires above groaned under the strain. Cornered, Elias stood his ground, his cutter sparking, his face calm as he lobbed his last EMP grenade, taking out a wave of drones and a flash of light and shrapnel, his shield pack flickering as it absorbed blow after blow, its circuits firing under the strain. His team scattered, some wounded, some fleeing, their cries lost in the chaos, their boots slipping in the sand as they ran. But he held the line, his jacket soaked with blood and sweat, his breath ragged but steady, his eyes burning with a fire that refused to die, his multi-tool sparking as he rewired a trap to buy them time. He fought like a man who'd seen too many endings, his movements precise, desperate, alive, his cutter flashing as he severed a drone's limb, his voice a low growl as he shouted for his team to fall back, his body shielding a wounded Elthar as he dragged them to cover. Silvara, sensing his peril through a vision that burned with urgency, abandoned her post, her psychic energy blazing like a star gone nova, a torrent of light that tore through the enemy as she carved a path to him, her lance a whirlwind of light, her glow white-hot as she fought with a ferocity she hadn't known she possessed. She found him slumped against a wall, blood pooling in the sand, his cutter still clutched in his hand, his shield pack shattered, his grin faint but unbroken, his eyes locked on her as if she were the only thing keeping him tethered to the world. Her glow flared, her hands trembling as she knelt beside him, pressing them to his wounds, her star-silk robe stained with red, her voice raw as she whispered, "You could have fled." Her fingers brushed his face, smearing blood and dust, her opalescent eyes shimmering with tears she hadn't known she could shed, her glow pulsing with a desperation that burned brighter than her light. Why stay, Elias? Why risk everything for us, for me? Elias, bloodied but unbowed, met her gaze, his voice a rasp, his grin faint but fierce, his hand finding hers despite the pain, his fingers weak but warm. Because you needed me? He said, his words steady despite the blood on his lips, his eyes soft with a sincerity that made her heart ache. And I don't ditch people who count on me. Not you, not Valther, not anyone. You're worth it, Silvara. You're worth fighting for. In that moment, Silvara saw not a lowly scavenger, but a man whose defiance burned brighter than her visions, a spark that illuminated the shadows of her world, a truth her centuries of foresight had never touched, a fire that warmed the cold clarity of her fate, a love that burned through the weave like a star. Back at the camp, the air between them crackled with unspoken words, a tension that hung like the auroras above, shimmering and alive, a promise and a question. Silvara sought Elias out, not for tactics, but for truths, her glow softer now, less a shield and more a beacon, her star-silk robes catching the moonlight as she moved through the camp, her steps silent but deliberate. She found him at the edge, tinkering with his skiff, its engines humming under his deft hands as he patched a blown capacitor with a scavenged wire, his fingers moving with a grace born of years spent coaxing life from the dead, his face lit by the faint glow of a portable lamp. She asked about Earth, its ruined cities, its stubborn hope, the stories of a species that refused to die despite a world that tried to break them, a planet of ash and steel where survival was a rebellion. Elias spoke of scavenging in asteroid fields, the silence of the void broken by the creak of dying ships, the stars so close you could almost touch them, their light cold but constant, of friends lost to pirate raids, their names etched into his skiff's hull like a litany of ghosts, their laughter still echoing in quiet moments, of his sister, Lila, lost to a raid when he was 16, her laughter a melody he carried, her memory a fire that drove him to keep going, to make something of the wreckage, to find meaning in the broken things. His words painted a world of grit and warmth, of broken things made whole, of lives worth saving despite the odds. Each story a thread that wove itself into Silvara's heart, unraveling the certainty she'd clung to for centuries, showing her a world where chaos could be beautiful. She began to share her own truths, haltingly at first, her voice low as she spoke of the weight of her role, the burden of being the oracle of the void, a title that was both crown and chain. It bound her to visions that showed 1,000 paths, each fraught with loss, each demanding she choose who would live and who would die, each choice a wound that never healed, a scar on her soul that glowed like her skin. She spoke of the isolation, the way her kin revered her but never truly saw her, their glows dimming in her presence as if she were a star too bright to approach, their voices hushed as if her visions might shatter them. She spoke of her blindness, not just to the physical world but to the simple joys others took for granted. A touch, a laugh, a moment unburdened by fate, a life where she could be Silvara, not the oracle. Elias listened, his silence a steady anchor, his hands stilling on his tools as he absorbed her words, his eyes soft with something she couldn't name but felt like understanding, a warmth that eased the ache in her chest. When she fell silent, her glow dimming with the weight of her confession, he offered her a small, scavenged trinket, a fragment of earth glass, smoothed by time, glowing faintly under the moons like a captured star, its edges warm from his hand, its light a soft echo of her own. Found this in a wreck, he said, pressing it into her 7-fingered hand, his touch careful, almost reverent, his fingers lingering just a moment longer than necessary, a spark that sent a shiver through her. Thought it might remind you there's beauty in the broken stuff. Even out here, even in us, scavengers, seers, doesn't matter. We're all a little cracked, but that's where the light gets in. Silvara's glow softened to amber, warm and alive, her fingers curling around the glass, its edges smooth against her skin, a fragile thing that felt like a promise, a warmth that spread through her like a star igniting. You are impossible, she murmured, her voice catching, as if the word was a confession, a surrender to something she couldn't name but felt in every pulse of her light. a love that burned through the cold clarity of her visions. Her opalescent eyes shimmered, her glow pulsing with a vulnerability she hadn't known she could feel. Her hand trembling as it held his, the glass a bridge between their worlds. Elias chuckled, his fingers brushing hers. A spark of warmth in the cold night that sent a shiver through her. His grin softening the weariness in his eyes. His voice low, teasing, but laced with a sincerity that made her glow flicker. "Yeah, us humans got a knack for messing with the odds," he said, his eyes locked on hers. A spark of humor hiding the depth of his feeling. "Keeps things interesting, don't it? Gotta say, you're pretty impossible yourself. A seer who cares, who fights, who sees me. Didn't think I'd find that out here. It wasn't love yet, but it was the spark of something unstoppable. A fire kindled in the dust of Arinder. A bond that burned brighter than the auroras above. A promise that neither could deny." The Concordance reconvened in the Crystal Citadel, its halls echoing with the weight of a new threat. A Krothax hive fleet massing in Arinder's orbit, its numbers dwarfing the outpost's defenders, its ships blotting out the stars like a swarm of locusts. Their psychic pulses a low, ominous hum that shook the air, a scream that lingered in the mind. The Elthar proposed a cold calculus, sacrificing human colonies in the outer wastes to slow the swarm, preserving their own worlds for the fight to come. Their glow steady as they spoke of necessity, of survival, of a galaxy that belonged to the strong. Their voices calm but cold, their logic unyielding. Elias stood, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. His jacket still stained with blood and dust, his eyes burning with a fire that silenced the room. His hands clenched at his sides as he faced the council, his boots leaving faint prints on the crystal floor. "You're wrong," he said, his gaze sweeping the gathered envoys. Xycra warlords, Vorlith emissaries, Elthar nobles, and the human delegates who looked at him with a mix of awe and fear. "We don't win by throwing lives away, not human, not Elthar, not anyone. We win by fighting together, by turning the odds against us into something we can use, by making something out of nothing. You think we're weak because we break? We're strong because we rebuild, because we don't give up, because we fight for every damn inch, for every life, for every chance. Give us a chance, and we'll show you what we're made of. Show you what humanity can do when you stop stepping on us." Silvara, torn between her visions and the man who'd reshaped them, stepped to his side, her glow steady, her star-silk robes shimmering like a beacon, her voice ringing with a conviction that defied centuries of Elthar doctrine. Her opalescent eyes fixed on the council, her hands steady despite the weight of her defiance. "The Scavenger speaks truth," she said, her words echoing in the crystal halls. A clarion call that silenced the murmurs, her glow pulsing with a warmth that felt like hope. "My visions show victory only in unity. His fire, our light, human grit and Elthar foresight. A weave that burns brighter than any I have seen. We stand together, or we fall alone, scattered like dust in the wind. Our fates unraveled by our own fear." The council gasped, their glows flickering in shock, their murmurs rising like a tide, the Xycra clicking in agitation, the Vorlith pulsing erratically, the Elthar nobles shifting uncomfortably. But her resolve held, anchored by the man beside her. His presence a spark that burned through her doubts, a fire that warmed her soul. Together, Elias and Silvara crafted a plan. A daring assault blending human guile with Elthar precision. A gamble that turned the swarm's strength against it. A plan born of desperation, cunning, and trust. Elias rigged derelict ships into decoys, their signals mimicking a fleet to scatter the swarm, broadcasting chaos across every frequency with salvaged comms units and jury-rigged jammers that disrupted the hive mind's pulses, sowing confusion in their ranks. He scavenged parts from the outpost's wreckage, building traps to funnel the enemy into kill zones, EMP mines that could cripple drones, sonic rigs that screamed like a dying army, their noise shaking the sands until the spires sang. Silvara's visions guided their strikes, pinpointing the fleet's weak points, command drones, relay nodes, the warlord's flagship, a hulking mass of carapace and steel that pulsed with psychic energy, its presence a wound in the weave. They worked through the night, his hands deft with tools, her hands weaving visions, their voices overlapping in a rhythm that felt like fate, their arguments sharp but their trust absolute. their laughter rare but bright when he teased her about her cryptic visions, his grin coaxing a rare smile from her lips, a flicker of light in her glow. Silvara challenged his reckless plans, her logic tempering his instincts, her visions sharpening his traps, their partnership a balance of fire and light, a harmony that felt like destiny. The battle raged across Arinder's deserts, the sky alight with plasma and auroras, the ground shaking with the clash of steel and claw, the air thick with the scream of drones, the roar of collapsing spires, and the faint, defiant hum of Elias's skiff as it wove through the chaos. Elias and Silvara fought as one, his tracks funneling Krothaks into choke points where her lances carved through their ranks with deadly grace, her glow a beacon that guided the Elthar through the chaos, her psychic energy a storm that burned through the enemy. He moved like a shadow, planting charges, redirecting drones, his skiff screaming through the sands to deliver supplies to stranded Elthar units, its engines glowing red-hot as he dodged claws and plasma bursts, his voice a shout over the comms as he rallied the human scouts. Silvara, her visions a beacon, struck at the hive's heart, her lance a whirlwind of light, her robe singed but her resolve unbroken, her glow pulsing with a ferocity that matched the fire in his eyes. But the Krothaks were relentless, their warlord. A massive creature with a carapace like a fortress and eyes that glowed with malevolent intelligence. Leading a counterattack, its psychic scream tearing at the minds of the Elthar, its claws ripping through crystal and flesh alike, its presence a wound in the weave that threatened to unravel their plan. Elias saw it lunge for Silvara, its claws aimed at her heart, its psychic pulse a wave that nearly shattered her focus, her glow flickering as she staggered under its weight. He threw himself in its path, his shield pack sparking as it absorbed a brutal blow, the impact sending him crashing into the sand, his cutter clattering from his hand, blood pooling beneath him, his breath coming in ragged gasps as his vision blurred. His grin held, fierce and unbroken, as he shouted her name, a warning and a plea, his voice cutting through the chaos like a beacon, his hand reaching for her even as he fell. Silvara's cry shattered the air, a raw, primal sound that shook the battlefield, her glow flaring white-hot as she unleashed a psychic wave, obliterating the warlord and its drones in a blinding surge of light that cracked the crystal spires around them, the sand turning to glass under the heat. She knelt beside Elias, her hands trembling as she pressed them to his wounds, her star-silk robe stained with red, her visions useless against the fear gripping her heart, her opalescent eyes shimmering with tears she hadn't known she could shed, her glow pulsing with a desperation that burned brighter than her light. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice breaking, her fingers brushing his face, smearing blood and dust, her tears falling like stars onto his skin. "You cannot leave me now, Elias. Not when I've seen you. Not when you've changed everything. Not when I need you." Elias grinned faintly, his hand finding hers, his fingers weak but warm, his voice a rasp that carried a spark of his defiance, his eyes locking with hers despite the pain. "Told you, we're a pain to predict," he said, his grin softening, his eyes soft with a love he hadn't named but felt in every beat of his heart. "You're stuck with me, Silvara. Not going anywhere, not yet." In the med bay, a sterile chamber of crystal and soft light, Silvara sat beside Elias, his chest bandaged, his breathing shallow but steady, his hand still clutching hers as if afraid to let go, his scars a map of his survival. She held the earth glass trinket, its faint glow mirroring her own, a fragile light in the sterile gloom, a reminder of the man who'd given it to her, the man who'd shown her a world beyond her visions. "You were right," she said, her voice raw with emotion, her glow pulsing with a warmth she'd never known, a warmth that felt like home, like hope, like love. "Humanity, you are more than I ever saw." My visions showed paths, futures, endings, a weave of cold fates that bound me to duty. But you showed me purpose, a reason to choose one, a reason to fight for something beyond the stars, for someone who sees me, who makes me whole. He opened his eyes, his grin weak but unyielding, his voice a rasp that carried the weight of his survival, his eyes softening as they met hers, a spark of humor hiding the depth of his feeling. "Guess I'm not just a scavenger, huh?" he said, his grin widening, his hand squeezing hers despite the pain. Gotta admit, you're not what I expected either. A seer who cares, who fights, who loves. It kinda makes the galaxy worth saving, don't it? The galaxy changed. The Krothax fleet was broken, its remnants scattered across Arinder's orbit, their hive minds silenced by Elias's jammers and Silvara's strikes, their warlord's death a blow that shattered their unity, a wound that bled into the void. The Concordance reformed, humans earning a voice where none had been before, their place cemented by a scavenger's defiance and a seer's faith, their partnership a beacon that lit the way for a new alliance. A galaxy where strength was measured not in centuries or power, but in the fire to stand together. Elias healed, his scars a map of his survival, each one a story of battles fought and won, of a man who'd turned junk into hope, who'd found love in the dust of Arinder. He and Silvara faced a universe of challenges, distrustful Elthar elders who saw their bond as heresy, restless swarm remnants stirring in the wastes, rival species who saw their unity as a threat, the weight of a love that defied their worlds, a bond that burned brighter than any star. But they faced it together, their hands clasped, their steps matched, their voices a harmony of grit and grace, their love a fire that no storm could extinguish, a light that burned through the dark. Their bond became a legend, whispered in the bazaars of Arinder, sung in the crystal halls of the Elthar, carved into the spires that stood against the auroras, a story told by traders, warriors, and dreamers alike. It was a testament to the truth that even a scavenger's spark, a fleeting human life, could outshine the stars, could rewrite the fates a seer had thought unchangeable, could forge a future from the wreckage of the past, could kindle a love that burned eternal in a galaxy of fleeting lights. The story closes with Elias and Silvara on a crystal ridge, hands clasped, the earth glass glinting between them like a promise, its faint glow blending with her amber light, a star born of their bond. Arinder's twin suns rise, their light casting a warm halo across the sands, a beacon of hope in a galaxy remade by their defiance, a future neither could have foreseen but both would fight to keep, a love that burned brighter than the stars above, a fire that would never fade.